Hey, Scifiworld. I am Bobby Olsen. I am one half of the directing duo behind the Stakelander.
Hey everyone, it's Scifiworld reading. I am Dan Berk, and I am the other half of the Stakelanders directing team.
Hi, Scifiworld. I'm Peter Phok. I'm one of the producers of the Stakelander with a company called Glass Eye Picks in New York, and Larry Fessenden is my producing partner.
Great. So, the obvious. How this film became a reality. I mean, we know that is a, you know, this film is a secret. Stakelander, the first one about one story. What kind of story we try? Tell us about the
Sure.
beginning of this.
Yeah, I think.
Let me start with
Peter
this.
can start with the inception of the project.
So Stakeland was a very special film that we did in 2009, and it premiered here in Sitges in 2010 with Jim Mickle, written by Jim and Nick D'Amici, who played Mister in the film, and we loved the film so much. We talked about making a sequel for a long time, but we didn't get movement with it for some time. Are you sure? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So last year, the company Dark Sky Films, who I've made a number of films with, including The House of the Devil, The Innkeepers, Stakeland, and most recently the Late Phases we produced at Glass Eye Picks. They approached us about seriously doing the sequel, and let's really talk about it. I said, look, if we want to make it, let's do it. And I talked to Nick about the script. He had written something and was very excited about it because he loved that character of Mister and wanted to come back and play it. We went to Jim to talk to him about doing it. Unfortunately, Jim was busy with other commitments. He has a new TV show, but gave us kind of the blessing to go out and find a new director to take on this world. And so Larry and I began the search to make the film, and this was last year. And then a good friend of ours, our associate producer on the Stakelander, Chad Harbold, met up with me one evening and suggested that I take a look at Dan and Bobby. And of course, I know these guys for some time, and I knew their film body, and I just hadn't considered it. And then I said, "Great, guys. Well, what do you think?" And then I think they can tell the story from there and how that came together.
Yeah, like Pete said, I mean, he came to us with the opportunity to take on the reins and drive the world forward for the sequel. And Bobby and I love the original, and we're huge fans of Pete and of Larry and all the movies that Glass Eye has done. So we kind of jumped at the opportunity and right away started collaborating with Nick on ideas, Nick D'Amici, on ideas of where we could take the story and how we could expand the world and stay true to the vision that Jim laid out in the first film. And yeah, I mean, it was a blast. It was Bobby's and my first film was very, very small. Our film Body, which premiered at Slam Dance in 2015, was a very much a micro-budget film. So this was a big opportunity for us as well to have a little bit more, resource to tell the story. So, it was a great experience for us.
Yeah, it was great because, it being a sequel, there was already sort of a family that was built into it. This whole, everybody who was involved in the original was really supportive. Jim especially, we were able to sit down with him and kind of pick his brain about, all the different, just a million different things about how to shoot the vampires, how to, working with Nick and working with these guys at Glass Eye and everything. And so it was a really supportive, inclusive family environment right from the beginning. It was fantastic.
Besides the fact that the first one is with one kind of monsters and the second one is another, which are the main differences between one movie and another? I mean, for that people who saw the first one and really like, or even that people who saw the first one and doesn't like, which do you think that will be the difference that can help to decide to the new audience to approach this second movie?
Yeah, sure. I think that the biggest difference between the Stakelander and the original Stakeland is the time that it takes place. The original film takes place sort of shortly after this vampire outbreak, and this film is about, somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 years later. So, you're talking about a world that is that much deeper into the apocalypse. And so there's a lot of differences there. There's obviously a lot of differences with how human society works. You're a little bit deeper into that Mad Maxy realm. You're a little bit further away from what we recognize as society, and then the vampires themselves. There's some of them there at this point now. There's more of them, but then they're also starving now. There are less humans around to eat, and that's kind of the thrust of this film, is that there is someone, an antagonist, who is kind of rounding up those remaining vampires and organizing them in a way to take out what's left of humanity.
Yeah, and I also, the first film, obviously, I think people took to the first film so much, and it kind of became such a beloved property because of the heart that it has. It's a film about vampires, but it's really about a film about Martin, of this young boy, kind of losing his innocence against the backdrop of an apocalyptic event. And in this film, we meet Martin 10 years later, and he's now a man in his own right. And so our task as directors and working with Nick for him writing the script was to maintain that heart but do it differently. So, where the first film was about Martin losing his innocence, this one we think is about him kind of after losing his loved ones at the beginning of the film, learning how to be a human again and not sort of devolve into the same monsters that he's always been fighting.
Yeah, I'd like to add, one of the things that I was keen about was that, while we have a beloved audience of the first film, I also feel like, a sequel can sometimes be, sort of a negative thing, and I love this world of Stakelander, so we want to kind of go back into it, and also make the film accessible for those who haven't seen the first film, and that you can enjoy the Stakelander without knowing the world, and I think, you understand what goes on very quickly, and I think these guys did a tremendous job doing that.
Perfect. I think that there is a lot of story to tell in this universe. No? Before you say something about perhaps one person is committed with some TV shows and doesn't work in this project with you, but do you think that there is here a way to tell a new stories in this moment when the TV is going so strong in the media?
Absolutely. There's also been talk about going exploring the world of a television series, certainly. I mean, and Nick has even gone as far as written some of that material, and we are continuing to explore that. I think, we're also, I think we're also purists. We like cinema, we like films, and I think adapting a cinematic world for television is becoming more and more common, and it's something like we're certainly open and interested to. It's just going to kind of follow the market.
I know, because there is really tiny shows, a Sherlock, 3 episodes, 1 season,
right,
with a lot of expectation every year. The people are waiting for the new Sherlock. This kind of stories are very a very hard fan base, no?
Yeah.
So perhaps sometimes a good way to tell this story that sometimes is for budget, for time, for production is hard to tell in movies. No?
Yeah, and that's what's great. I feel like the lines between episodic television and feature films are starting to be blurred now, and you have things like something like Stranger Things, for instance, that that first season, it feels like one large movie just split into different parts. It's not like an episode of some medical procedural where every episode is just a new patient with some disease you have to cure. It's telling one continuous story, but you get 8 hours to do it instead of 2, and I think that's really attractive to filmmakers like ourselves. I think that's something we would love to do someday.
Of course, we have this discovering the magazine of this number, and that almost everyone that we were talking to, they say that they saw the whole film in just 1 day.
Oh yeah. Yep.
8 hours.
It was two. It was 2 for me because we started at 8. I had to sleep at some point.
Right.
So, and you're absolutely right when you say that there is some kind of blur between TV and movies, no, and cinema. What do you think is the new future of the TV and the new uncertain future of films in theater? What do you think?
I mean, I think next? TV is, we're seeing it already, but it's, these content companies that have that are capitalized content companies that can spend money on their own content and not stick to any kind of, not be shackled by any sort of seasonal structure where it's like you don't need to put the pressure on your writers of having 24 episodes in a season. You could do a limited 6-episode season and get everyone really excited, or 8-episode season, and then if there's demand for it, do more. And it's like and sort of have a bit more of the like independent film style of like let the sort of market demand, like there's a sequel for Stakelander because people loved Stakelander. It wasn't a show that they had to go and put a ton of money at and see if it fails halfway through. So I think it's just TV. I think it's just like Bobby said, the lines being blurred. It's TV being having the structural freedom with episode length, and also of course the deployment of it, not watching it necessarily on a traditional television set, watching it on your laptop or whatever it is, or on any of your mobile devices or anything like that. And then what's TV and what's film at that point? It's just kind of all
Because it came to my
programming.
mind that if I am a TV show viewer, a person who likes to see TV, there is always a danger. Oh, I like a show, they will cancel in 2 or
Right.
3 episodes once it's not successful. This doesn't happen in this kind of platform. No?
Right.
So for that reason, is more confused that little frontier between one media and another.
Well, I think what we're seeing also is an investment, and not just the content, but also in the filmmakers behind it. When you talk about a show like Stranger Things, it's the Duffer Brothers doing the whole series, and you're approaching it like a film. So I think, if we were to approach a series, we do it similarly, where you can write out, the series, and then treat production as like one large film, as opposed to, because traditionally network television, you shoot an episode one at a time, and so there's adjustments and sometimes different directors come in and out. We're starting to see that change a lot more, and the networks and also the content providers really embracing and investing in the filmmakers.
And I think a big part of that is the trust that companies like Netflix put into the content creators, because when back in the day, you're kind of going episode by episode, and you get axed at any moment, and so you have to make sure that your story is front loaded in some way. And in this, when Netflix tells you like, yeah, you get a series, you get 8 episodes, go for it. You get to tell it how you want to tell it and pace it how you want to pace it, and you don't have to worry about hooking everybody every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m.
Right.
You put it all there in the way that it's meant to be read, as if it were a novel or something like that,
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about chopping it up and making it sexy in the beginning and catching people right before the commercial break and everything like that. And I think that's an incredibly liberating thing for filmmakers.
Yeah, and it ensures a consistent vision too, to have that trust in a single filmmaker. And in the Duffer Brothers case, it's a couple filmmakers, like that you're getting that's what they wanted. It's a consistent vision. That's what they wanted to put forth, and they got the opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Going back to the cinema. Okay, that's our thing,
Sure.
of course. No, sorry to make
The lines are blurred.
this. And do you think that there will be there is Stakelander, ultimate Stakelander, or
Stakelander-er?
There will be.
Well, I think I think the reception to this film will certainly kind of encourage us to consider what's next. Nick loves this world and loves to to tell stories, and every day would always bring up stories like, "Hey guys, the next film. What about this, Mister? Is he back? Is he not? We don't know." And so there's, I think, a lot there to explore, and I think if the fans are interested, I think then we would certainly find a way to make more content.
Yeah, certainly not going into any details to spoil anything, but the way this film ends, there's certainly open doors to continuing the story, following any number of characters. So.
Perfect. Pues I think we are done. Guys, good luck with the movie.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Talking about, there is any distribution here in Spain for the film?
Spain.
We're not sure yet. I would imagine, at some point, Dark Sky Films is handling the international sales, and the first film, Stakelander, did tremendously well, and so we're kind of going back. But distribution has changed so much in the last 8 years since the previous film.
So please, before to finish, try to look at the camera and say why the Spanish people, the Spanish crowd, must go to the cinemas and see Stakelander.
Sure. I mean, if you, whether you saw the first film or you want to just jump back into the world, it's it's a fantastic story, and if you like, if you like these types of movies, if you like vampires, and especially if you saw the first one and you want to see what happened to Mr. and Martin, you have no choice but to see it. It's a must.
Yeah, and we've been here at the Sitges Film Festival for a week now. It's our first time, and it's been, the crowds particularly have been phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Everyone really eats up genre stuff here, and so if that's any indication of the Spanish population, then you have to go and see this movie.
Yeah.
And you should definitely see the film in a cinema, because I think watching movies with an audience is the best part of experiencing movies altogether, because I think while it still exists, theatrical, I think distribution is limited these days, and so go to the cinema, support the cinema.
Perfect. Really great.
All right.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Good luck. Good luck.
All right.